With Until Dawn's remake recently coming out, I decided to play the original one to answer two questions. One, is the original game worth playing in 2024? And two, is the remake worth getting? Since I've never played the original one, we're going to break this up into a few different aspects to answer our questions. One, we're going to talk about story. Two, gameplay aspects. Three, outdated things that I feel like could have been improved. And four, how the remake differs from the base game. With all this being said, let's get right into it. Little disclaimer before we get on with the story. I do want to say that we won't be talking about main spoilers for the story. However, I will mention a little bit of some of the choices I made and who all got hurt from those. But just in case that you all have never played the game, I won't spoil the later half of the story. We'll stop around a little bit less than halfway point for those of y'all who've never played this game. All right, this game starts off in a cabin in the woods during the winter. A bunch of horny teenagers are having a party when they decide to play a cruel joke on this one girl named Hannah. Now, Hannah gets embarrassed from this joke because they try to get her with one of this other girl's boyfriend, and they all play a prank on her. They all record it, and Hannah's just extremely embarrassed. She runs out of the house during the middle of winter, which leads to her twin sister Beth running after her. Now, this little chase after each other leads to a few events which lead them both dead. The events of the entire rest of this game take place exactly a year after, on the anniversary, to help their brother Josh cope with the fact that his sisters got killed. Josh just wants them all to have a fun night and forget about everything that happened the previous year before. But as you can see, things don't quite go the way that they planned. During their stay, things don't exactly take place how they imagined. There seems to be somebody stalking them from the woods. And with this being a narrative-driven game, each of the characters react a little differently to it. Some of them are smarter than others. Some of them are cautious than others. Jess, for example, is kind of a bitchy teenager that is really insecure deep down. And there's one point in the game where her and another girl named Emily kind of get into it a little bit. Or Josh, who just wants to have fun, wants to drink, wants to have everybody get a good time. Mike, who's just trying to get laid by Jess, making kind of funny jokes the whole time. This game gave me Friday the 13th kind of vibes, you know, with the teenagers in the beginning and how the events play throughout the rest of the game. They're out in a cabin. They're all kind of messing around. Things don't go as expected. And I definitely think the second half of this game is a lot better than the first half. First half is kind of slow, but this game kind of takes a format of like a horror movie. So it's pretty straightforward in some of these tropes. But with this being a narrative driven game, there's a lot of replay value to this game. For example, early on, I got one of the characters killed because I wasn't fast enough to help save them. Now, I personally did not want them to die that early. I actually wanted her to survive later on, but with me being slow and kind of taking my time, being safe about things, ended up getting her killed. And the rest of the game after that, I didn't really take any. I took a lot more risks during the game because I realized that the safest route is not always the best route. But, you know, the game is also pretty short. So like, along with the replay value things, my playthrough was like 7-8 hours, give or take. I went through and got some of the collectibles, not all of them granted, but with it being short and it being like an interactive movie, I would just play it after work when I came home. I didn't really have to stress about anything. I just picked the choices and I kind of got to lay down and just kind of relax. All right, let's move on to some gameplay aspects of Until Dawn. For many of you all who've maybe never played an interactive, like kind of story game, it's similar to like the Telltale series, or like think of a movie that instead of it being played out already, this game is very cutscene heavy. Like there is a few like gameplay parts where you like move around and you get to collect things and this and that. But for the most part, you were just picking choices. And a lot of these choices would change like the outcomes of the game. For example, like you checking like this one girl's phone or like zipping up her bag can have an impact on like y'all's relationship. Doing certain things will help save you, and some of them will definitely fucking screw you over. And there's some like quick time events as well. There's moments where like you need to hold the controller still, and if you don't, you're probably dead. There's moments like later, like when you're climbing something or you're in a chase sequence that you need to do quick time events, almost like Spider-Man and stuff. And if you mess those up, you're pretty much dead. I didn't mess any of them up. That's a lie. I messed one up, and one of the characters ended up tripping over something. They almost died because of it. They didn't quite die. I felt like if I messed up one more, I probably would have been dead, but there is no going back in this game. You can't redo scenes. You know, your choices and your actions really do matter in this game. And like when you're walking from like scene to scene, or like there's little moments where like you actually do get to like play a little bit. The camera angle is a lot like the OG Silent Hill 2. I'm personally not a fan of the camera angle. I think it's a little awkward and a little hard to control, and it's just kind of funky. Granted, I haven't really played much games with this camera angle, so I'm not really used to it. So if you're used to it, I don't feel like it would be too bad. But for somebody who's never played a game like this, it's a little wonky. And then at the end of each like chapter or episode, whatever you want to call it, it plays like greatest hits like thing, or like a recap of what's all happened throughout the game, which I guess if you take breaks or like you play like one of these each day for like a week or something, it would be okay. But I played multiple chapters back to back, and it got kind of annoying that I couldn't really skip them. You know, it's not a long game, so I didn't really have issues remembering things. The only time I really felt it was useful is at one point of the game, two of these characters do something and you don't get to see one of those characters until like the very end of the game. At that point, I felt like I needed to like recap a little bit of what happened. But other than that, it really didn't feel like it added much. If anything, it kind of took the immersion out. So things that I felt could be improved. Now, these are games that I'm not griping Until Dawn for. These are things that I felt like the remake could improve on. For example, the camera angle. One of the things that I personally didn't like about the game is there's no save button. Now that doesn't mean your game doesn't save. Your game just doesn't really let you know. And so I had to Google like how to get out of the game and make sure my stuff was saved. And essentially you just exit out of the game. And it'll save where you're at, which I've never really played a game where this is quite like that. Online games are a bit different, but single player story, narrative driven games, it's a little weird not to have a save button. It threw me off, but I guess as I got used to it, it was pretty nice. The frame rate during the episode recaps is atrocious. I don't know what frame rate it is. It's probably like 20. Like it got really choppy, and I'll see if I could put some on screen for you guys just to know what I'm talking about. And then of course, as I said, like the episode recaps aren't skippable, which of course none of the other cutscenes in this game are skippable because they're long cutscenes for the most part. So I think that's a good option. But I feel like, you know, for the episodes, it's a whole different cutscene. Like it's a whole different frame rate. You can't tell me that it can't distinguish like this from a different cutscene. So I don't know why they won't let you skip it. Now, some things that the remake adds. It adds a new over-the-shoulder like camera, akin to something like God of War or whatever, which is much needed in my opinion. It felt like I was actually playing the character. Updated visuals, of course. Any remake, there's gonna be updated visuals. So that's to be expected. There's new music. There's new cutscenes and things that add to the story. For example, the very beginning of the game, there's a brand new cutscene that adds like 10 extra minutes onto the opening scene and gives you context of the joke that they're playing on her and just kind of how the night's gone. Now that's like the biggest change I've seen in cutscenes, is definitely the first part. And then there's a new ending, which hints to a sequel. I mean, those are valid things to add. Those are things that I would expect a remake to add, but you know, does it add much over the base game? And that's why I'm making this video here, to distinguish whether or not you should just play the original, pay like 20 bucks. You could probably get it from somewhere else cheaper, or are you gonna pay 60 bucks for the remake? Now, if you're on PC, you have no choice. You have to pay the 60 bucks, which I don't really think most people are gonna go out of their way on Steam to buy this game. You know, out of Sony's exclusives, Until Dawn's a little underrated. I don't really hear anybody be talking about Until Dawn. Of course, the remake everybody wants, including myself, is Bloodborne. And I remember a lot of people kind of being upset that this got a remake. The game is older than some of the other games that Sony has been remaking recently. Of course, we got Horizon, which in my opinion, I think it's dumb that they're remaking Horizon, and just some other choices that I just don't agree with, like The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us 1, I could see both parts of the story for that one. Like, I personally like the visual upgrade and the accessibility changes and stuff, but if you've played the original, I mean, it's the same game, essentially. So with Until Dawn, unlike some of those other games that I've mentioned, you cannot just buy the upgrade. There is no $10 upgrade for this one. If you want to buy the remake, you have to full out buy it because it's not made by Supermassive. So it's not exactly the whole same game. So for me, that's a bit of a tougher sell here. Of course, if you have the original, just play the original. It doesn't look bad, like whatsoever. You know, frame rates are a little buggy here and there. And there's like one bug I got during the whole game where it kind of glitched out the cutscene and I got a view of like some of the character models, which you think after all this time that would be fixed. But other than that, there's not really any bugs I experienced playing this. And for it coming out of what, 2015 or so, it's not a bad game to play whatsoever. But with that being said, if you don't have the original one, or if the remake goes on sale, I would say you could probably pick up the remake and be fine. I enjoyed the game personally. I'm pretty sure the platinum's only like 20 hours. It's like 3 playthroughs, just some collectible stuff. And like I said, it's a pretty short game. And you know, you could just play it with like a family member or a significant other and just act like it's a movie and play it like a few nights in a row. Of course, it's Halloween season. This will fit perfectly right in. Granted, there is some better Halloween games I would personally play right now. But yeah, it's not a bad game at all. Now, Supermassive has another pretty decent game. I know the Dark Pictures is not too well received, but I do know the Quarry got a decent bit of traction there for a little bit. So if you've ever played the Quarry or anything like that, I would recommend playing Until Dawn. If you liked the video, guys, make sure to please leave a like, subscribe, and, you know, share it with others. I talk about anything games, really, me playing them for the first time and kind of giving like a review or a retrospective insight to them. And this has been Sir UD. I'll see you all later.